There are over 500,000 kids in foster care across the United States, and making sure they're well taken care of takes a village. I'm Erin Lindstrom, and this is Foster Care Aware, a production brought to you by Tidewater Friends of Foster Care with support from the Barry Robinson Center. If you've had it on your heart to become a foster parent, volunteer, donor, advocate, or just want to learn more, you're in the right place. For more information on how to move forward, head to fostercareaware.org/next steps. And now I'm thrilled to share today's segment with you. Hey, I'm Erin Lindstrom, and I am joined by Audra Bullock, the President and Director of Tidewater Friends of Foster Care, and Mary McGowan, the Executive Director of ATTACH, which is the Association for Training on Trauma and Attachment in Children, and a national expert on trauma and attachment in kids. Thank you so much for joining us, Mary.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here again and share with you all.
Yeah, we're so excited too. So in today's segment, I'm super excited because we get to actually dig a little bit deeper into the theory of attachment and how it plays into brain development. So Mary, let's dive in. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So when we think about attachment, attachment is that innate need to connect with another human being and to build a trust and a reciprocal relationship. So, if we look at a healthy attachment, we're looking at the ability to have trust, love, believe that we have a safe world that we live in, that we have people that we can trust and lean on, and they can lean on us, and it builds our self-esteem. I mean, it's amazing what happens with attachment, which is a nice way or a fancy way of saying connection and trust. It is, as I mentioned, it's absolutely an innate part of us. Every human being needs to connect with another human being in order to be whole, in order to build relationships. Our attachment is the foundation of all future relationships.
Mary, so can you give our viewers a concept of an ideal situation? How is attachment formed in children?
Sure. So a healthy attachment would be formed by even going way back, having good neonatal care, because just, again, if you think about the placenta and the umbilical cord is a direct line into that infant. And so it would be, if we're stressed, if we are experiencing things, it goes into the chemicals actually go into the infants in utero. And when we start with a healthy attachment at birth, this is being attentive. This is our baby giving us signals, usually crying, but it can be discomfort on their face, that type of thing. When we hear that and we see that, we attend to it. So we don't just say, oh, they'll be fine, they'll just settle down. But we know that they are expressing a need. So how we build attachment in the beginning is responding to their crying, responding to their needs. And that could be they're hungry, they're tired. I think we talked about this a little bit. They don't feel well, but the one that we overlook, and that's the connection, is they just need human contact. And so the best thing we can do is pick them up. We make eye contact with them. One of the most fascinating things I think that has been discovered through some of brain development work and understanding how attachment or poor attachments impact our brain development is that ability for what we have as mirror neurons. And those neurons literally reciprocate or show an infant what we are seeing, what we are feeling. So it shows intention. That's kind of hard to wrap around. But in other words, when we're holding an infant and we're looking into their eyes and they're looking into our eyes and we're making this connection, we are triggering our mirror neurons, and it is building trust. It is building millions of brain cells and pathways to our higher brain, which is what we need in order to have regulation and control of emotions and all those vital pieces. And it's something that is fascinating because when we look into their eyes, and they look into ours. If you've ever done those silly little faces, you know, it's like, "Ooh, aren't you so cute?" Or you, you know, I do that with my grandson and with my great niece, and they do it back, and it's like, whoa, those are mirror neurons in action, because they're seeing and feeling our intent, and that builds the relationship tremendously from the get-go.
That's incredible. So when children come into foster care, they're going through a major attachment disruption, not just from their parents or primary caregivers, but virtually everything and everyone that they're accustomed to seeing and being with. Can you tell us a little bit about like the impact of that?
I can, from an outsider's perspective. I've never experienced it, but if we think about this, and when I do some workshops, I have the adults in the room actually close their eyes and do a visual imagery of sitting in your living room in your favorite chair, your TV show's on, or you're reading your book, the smell of food is cooking, and all of a sudden strangers show up at the door. They knock, they say, "You need to come with me," and you're like, "Wait, what? Wait, no, what?" And you're confused, you don't know what's going on, you're not given information. And you're taken to a stranger's house. You're put in a stranger's home without understanding, when will I go back? What happened? Did I cause this? Now, you think of an adult, I don't know about you, but I'm getting sweaty just thinking about it. It makes me feel very uncomfortable as an adult. Now go down to a developmental stage or age of a child or youth who don't even have the cognitive skills that we have. And imagine what it's like to lose your home, your favorite possessions, your clothes many times, your schools, friends, everything that you own many times. If it's an emergency placement where they just come and get you in the middle of the night and you go into an emergency shelter, you've lost everything. So you have nothing but yourself, and now you move into a home of strangers. This is going to impact anyone, whether you already had abuse and neglect and trust issues. It's going to exacerbate it. And I think that's why it's so important that we do everything we can to put services in place and keep children in homes when it's safe and when the parent or parents are willing to work with us. But when those children rather go into those situations, I can't imagine how scared they are. And new rules, you know, for older kids, new rules and new guidelines, different food, even infants, new smells, a new sense of touch. You know, one thing I ask when I take infants is, how did you hold them? How do you rock them? Because we all kind of have a different way. And you'll find that if you hold them a certain way, they scream and cry. But if you hold them the way that the other caregiver or the parent held them, they're used to that, and it brings comfort. So there's just so many things that happen when a child goes in out of home placement. I think we need to put ourselves in their shoes more often than we do.
Yeah, that's an amazingly powerful perspective shift. I think that changes everything, just from even thinking about, can I be a foster parent, to think about the child's experience and be like, oh, I can be that warm place where they come and I'm willing to learn. Like, thank you so much for sharing that.
And it must be really important, Mary, to allow the children to attach with you and in a mutual way, right? To have these authentic attachments with, you know, foster parent and foster child, while also trying your very hardest to maintain the primary attachment to their original caregivers, right? I mean, and how, so tell us a little bit about, you know, what as foster parents should we be doing, what shouldn't we be doing when we see, you know, these manifestations of behavior around attachment issues?
Absolutely. And let me answer the first part, and that is you're describing triangulation or splitting, if you will. You know, for older kids, how can they come into a home and build a relationship? You're working on building trust in a relationship when they feel they're being disloyal to their family of origin, if they like you and if they connect with you. So there's that piece for the older children. And then there's the piece of coming into the home and again, stepping into their shoes. And things that we should avoid are, here's the rules, you know, here's the consequences. And just, so many times I've seen people put the rules up on the refrigerator for, school age teenagers when they walk in the door. What kind of a greeting is that? Instead of, hey, what do you like? What things are important to you? It's so important to build the relationship. That is the key thing. Another common thing that folks do, again, well-meaning foster parents, but they assimilate their children. And what that means is they try to make them like their home. So when we assimilate, it means the children come in from different cultures. And when I say different cultures, that can be ethnicity, but it doesn't have to be. You could be a Caucasian, Catholic, middle class child coming into the same, and yet you still both have different cultures, because culture is how you celebrate holidays, the language you use, just the rituals and routines that you have. And so many times I've seen, particularly with different transracial placements, is that when youth come into the home, we want them to act like us. We want them to eat foods like us. We want them to read our books, all of those kind of things, instead of creating this warm and welcoming situation. I had a Latino family, siblings, come in to my home, and I did everything I could. I put, bienvenidos on the front door, and I went out and bought a lot of little kids' books in Spanish and filled the kitchen with foods and things that I thought that they would appreciate. And I worked hard to learn some sentences and some things in Spanish because I'm rusty. And, doing those kind of things instead of making them like us. If you remember, when children come to us, they come with just themselves and their self-identity. So the best thing that we could do is try to avoid making them like us, find out what their identity is, and then help them nurture it and bring it forward so that they still have a sense of who they are.
Incredible. One of the things I think that this brings a memory of me of I was listening to some foster parents talk about a placement of a teenage kid, and he had been in so many different homes, and he had gone out to a gang afterwards, and he had been shot, and this particular couple got him when he was coming out of the hospital. And the difference between that couple taking him in that was so successful for him and all the other placements that he had is they started off with, what do you need? So let's talk about you and how we can help make this work for you. Everybody else, Mary, had laid on those series of rules of this is our house and this is how you're going to act. And nobody ever said, hey, boy, what do you need in this? And that can make all the difference, is trying to meet their needs, not, again, assimilate them into us. So Mary, you've got a wealth of experience with children of all ages, going through your home. You've been a foster and adoptive parent for quite a while now. And I would just love to hear some of your own experiences of how did you deal with attachment issues? You mentioned in the last segment your son who was a newborn, and he still had attachment issues as he went forward. How do we as parents recognize some of these things, and how do we work to heal them?
Well, it's a great question, and I'll try to answer it briefly, although it's really could be a whole training in and of itself. But, for me, I started out not knowing, just quite frankly, not knowing about trauma and attachment. So when my placement came in, and she would break her glasses, and she would, stand outside my door and almost scratch to get in. And I felt trapped. I didn't understand. She had a desperate need to feel safe. I would give her time and attention, but I didn't understand what was underneath the behaviors. And I think for me, when I started realizing that every behavior we see that we tend to focus on as foster parents, that's, oh, they flipped the table over, they threw the food at me, they refused to do their homework, whatever it might be. Those behaviors are telling us something, that there's a driving need or insecurity underneath those behaviors. And for me, the big change came when I started seeing that it wasn't a personal attack on me. It wasn't about my parenting. That gave me this freedom to step back and not be defensive and go, you know what? This isn't about me. Get over yourself, Mary. You need to focus on the children. And by doing that, I was able to change my self-talk. I jokingly talk about my two selves and not being schizophrenic, but the self that tries and tries and tries, and it's like, this is my house, these are my rules, you'll do it my way. All that I've done and sacrificed, and this is how I'm treated. That is poor self-talk. That is learned self-talk that is harmful, that we need to avoid. When my therapeutic person with just, again, I don't have anything other people don't have other than just educating myself and practicing it, just like any of you can do. Anyone can do this. When I started learning, you're ticked off because you're going to have to shampoo that rug that they just dumped their milk on. But they did it because what is underneath? What is going on? They're scared. They're feeling out of control, whatever it might be. And so I've been able to shift my thinking and pull myself away from it and see that it's a need. It's a cry for help. And so I'm able to step back instead of escalating with them, which I would do sometimes, again, verbally, it's just raising my voice when they raise their voice. I learned to stay calm. I learned to have this self-talk, because the best thing we can do is stay calm with them and be a calming force. If we want them to trust us and we're escalating with them and they're triggering us, we're not going to get anywhere. They're going to be just as afraid of us. We're going to reinforce their idea that, yep, all adults, are going to get escalated. Next, it'll probably be, I could get hit and that kind of thing. So it's calming myself, understanding why they're doing it, having compassion for them, and trying to spot it ahead of time. So, and that takes a little time, but you get to know your child. And so you might start seeing different things, like they start pacing or showing nervous signs. And then that's when you step in before it escalates and say, hey, what's going on? Or you want to play a game, you want to go for a walk, whatever it might be, as you get to know the child, to just try to calm them down. And, the saying, connection before correction, I know we hear it a lot. But this is really based on relationships. If you want to help them learn to trust and calm and regulate their emotions and feelings, they need to know that you have their back. They need to know that you trust them. I think about a story several years ago. I think it was 2011, maybe 2012. I had a severe head injury. I fell walking my dog, hit my head, and I had a traumatic brain injury, and it was very difficult. As a single parent, I was home with my kids who were much younger, and I had to sit in the dark. I had to have sunglasses on. All the windows had to be covered, and I couldn't get up to get food and all those kind of things. And my children kept bringing me water. Mom, we read online, you're supposed to drink water. And they're bringing me these gallons of water and trying to feed me and do all these things. And, I teared up and I just said, guys, I am so sorry. I'm supposed to be taking care of you. I'm picturing all their needs and their attachment. And they're like, don't worry, Mom, we've got your back. And it was just like, oh, all these years of me telling and hopefully showing them that I had their back, that they could trust me. Wasn't sure if I got through. You do things because you hear that they work, right? And here I am in this terrible shape, and they use my words with those actions. And it was one of the most powerful and healing experiences I've ever had with my kids.
That's incredible. I love all of this. I'm a coach and I teach something similar, which is basically exactly what you're talking about. And I talk about it in terms of your human and your being, and how your human is that like reactive part that is very much in the weeds, right? And reacting to everything. And your being is able to like zoom out and see the bigger picture and hold space for what's happening. And it sounds like that's the same thing that we're kind of asking parents to step into, that zone of being where you are looking at the bigger picture rather than just reacting. And it's incredible how, as you do that, they learn the same thing just from you doing it. It goes back to the mirror neurons, I imagine, and like how we learn from each other.
Well, right. And as we know, anyone, but particularly children, they copy what we do, not what we say. And so if you want to find out what you're strong in and what you're not so strong in, just observe your children. And they will tell
Exactly.
you, when we go in public, they're always saying, oh, your kids have the best manners. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting, because that was important to my parents and I learned that and passed it on. And then there's other things, which we won't go into, but that it's like, oh, you got that from me,
Yeah.
and it's just awakening. But I like that, Erin. I whatever analogies we need to use to help us separate those things and be able to stay calm and present. They need us. They need us to be adults. They need us to have that working mind that says, they're not capable. We are going to hold them. We are going to make them feel safe. It's okay, honey. We've got you. It's okay. We'll figure this out. I know it hurts.
I love that point of hold them. And I think for the viewers that haven't been involved in foster care, we get these children and they're not necessarily their chronological age in every element of their life, meaning that maybe they're much older in a responsibility perspective because they've been parentified than, their physical age. But in other emotional areas, they may be much, much younger. For example, children that have been in my home that are fully capable of feeding themselves and have been doing that for years, they ask to be fed because it's comforting. And the old kind of school mantra of parenting where you got to be independent, you feed yourself if you can do it, it doesn't apply here. It can't work. Those children really do need to be hand fed because they need that comfort. They need that security. So I think having, kind of the rigid parenting off the table, more of the nurturing, the coddling, because I think this is something that either was missed early on or because of that traumatic severing of a primary caregiver relationship, they need to reestablish with somebody new to be able to trust. So I think some of these techniques, and particularly that come from your book, can you tell us a little bit about your book, Hope for Healing, that might give resources to our parents that are becoming, endeavoring into foster care?
Absolutely. So we've read a book called Hope for Healing, a Parent's Guide to Trauma and Attachment. This book covers kind of A to Z. What are the attachment styles? What styles do we have? And what is trauma? How does it impact the brain? It goes into it more in detail. We look at behaviors and what's happening underneath the behaviors. It covers what it looks like in a school setting and how we can do practical things that will help change how we parent and parent in a therapeutic way using some of these tools that we talked about today. And I think it's a great resource. There's things in there like how to choose how to choose a therapist, and a lot more helpful tips in that book.
Incredible. I think it's so cool too that, even just in this conversation, there's so much that can be revealed about all of this. And I think even just learning about it is like, and a portal sort of opens. And then Attach does a really incredible job of actually helping parents strengthen this muscle, because it is a muscle and it takes practice to really take essence of being the being more and more, right? And to show up as the parent with the open heart who's holding space. So Mary, can you talk to us a little bit more about the different ways people can get support from Attach, and where should they go if they do want to take that next step?
Yeah, so you can go to attach.org, which is our website, and on there you'll see our different trainings that we have. In fact, our Hope for Healing training, we are bringing live on webinar next month. It's a 3-part series, and that flyer will be released probably today on our website, attach.org. So for families and people that haven't had it, they can jump on there and they can catch it in a 3-part series on Fridays. Don't have the dates memorized, but it's definitely coming up in June. We have parent support where we have weekly support calls. We have an online Facebook. We have a parent support advocate that parents can call and talk with. We do our trainings for both parents, professionals, advanced training, postgraduate training. We have our annual conference, which is coming up in October. We've just made the decision to make it virtual, so it's going to be online. We're cutting the price for that to make it affordable. It's phenomenal because we're a unique conference. We have very specific workshops for parents, for social workers, clinicians, mental health, occupational therapy, teachers. We just cover a grand scheme of workshops and trainings and networking opportunities. Even online, we're busy creating an experience that will feel more like in person, hopefully, than not. So that information as well is on our website.
Incredible. Well, thank you, Mary, so much for sharing all of this with us and with our viewers, and honestly for doing this work in the world and caring for these kids and teaching other people how to do the same thing.
Thank you for this opportunity, and keep up your good work.
Thanks, Mary. So good to see you again.
You as well. Take care.
And a big thank you for listening. Foster Care Aware is all about spreading the word about how we can help the kids who are in care in whatever capacity works for you. Tidewater Friends of Foster Care is here to help support you through the journey. Whether you want to be a foster parent, volunteer, donor, or advocate, head on over to fostercareaware.org/nextsteps to learn more.